Regenesys Business School, developing sound leadership skills in business and public management. Studying with Regenesys Business School gives you access to a world-class education delivered through contact learning or our cutting-edge digital learning platforms. By the time you graduate, you will have gained invaluable knowledge, experience, and support from our captains of industry, government officials, and high-profile entrepreneurs who regularly deliver engaging leadership conversations to our students and alumni, such as the MBA and a variety of postgraduate diplomas, bachelor's degrees, and higher certificates are fully accredited and internationally recognized. Our directors handpick top-rated facilitators from around the world to engage our students and clients. Our authentic and integrated approach to intellectual, emotional, and spiritual intelligence is what gives our students an edge in the workplace. Classes are held at our campus in Sandton at company-specific venues nationally. Invest in yourself by joining Regenesys Business School and awaken your potential. Regenesys Business School, developing sound leadership skills in business and public management. Studying with Regenesys Business School gives you access to a world-class education delivered through contact learning or our cutting-edge digital learning platforms. By the time you graduate, you will have gained invaluable knowledge, experience, and support from our captains of industry, government officials, and high-profile entrepreneurs who regularly deliver engaging leadership conversations to our students and alumni. Regenesys qualifications such as the MBA and a variety of postgraduate diplomas, bachelor's degrees, and higher certificates are fully accredited and internationally recognized. Our directors handpick top-rated facilitators from around the world to engage our students and clients. Our authentic and integrated approach to intellectual, emotional, and spiritual intelligence is what gives our students an edge in the workplace. Classes are held at our campus in Sandton at company-specific venues nationally. Invest in yourself by joining Regenesys Business School and awaken your potential. Regenesys Business School, developing sound leadership skills in business and public management. Studying with Regenesys Business School gives you access to a world-class education delivered through contact learning or our cutting-edge digital learning platforms. By the time you graduate, you will have gained invaluable knowledge, experience, and support from our captains of industry, government officials, and high-profile entrepreneurs who regularly deliver engaging leadership conversations to our students and alumni. Regenesys qualifications such as the MBA and a variety of postgraduate diplomas, bachelor's degrees, and higher certificates are fully accredited and internationally recognized. Our directors handpick top-rated facilitators.
My wealth in
look at the way that we do business, the way that we manage HR, and of course our policies, our procedures, code of practices, everything that has to be aligned with that particular. So, from a, I've got one saying that I've said with a lot of companies as well, and that is that we tend to say that we have to comply. But if we become a mature environment, and then I'm talking about understanding the dynamics of our environment, understanding the dynamics of our society, and the requirements of our society, we automatically develop a environment of compliance. If I can put it that way. So if you only drive compliance, you, in my opinion, you are missing the boat. All right, because then you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Yes, your mining license might depend on it, but we were also working in an environment and a society of communities that's dependent on us. So from that perspective, I think it's important, and I have seen it where in my particular environment in the Northern Cape, in particular the Namakwa region, if you drive pure employment equity initiatives and triple BE initiatives, we will never make the target because of the demographics of the environment. So we've changed our mindset and we've engaged in dialogue with the relevant stakeholders to ensure that we build an environment that is conducive to all within this environment. I'm not catering for anybody in Gauteng, for example. I'm in the largest province with less people in the whole of the province than in Johannesburg alone. So where and what do I select from? Only that which I have. And because of our remoteness, people doesn't want to come to the Namakwa necessarily. When I came here a couple of years back, my daughter said to me, "Dad, you're going to a place where 3 meters grows, nothing grows 3 meters high, and it keeps on growing." And it's true. For a hamburger and chips, I have to drive 220 kilometers to have a hamburger and chips. All right. So from that perspective, the dynamics of the HR environment in our particular case at this stage is quite different from that which you will find, for example, from an Impala or a Harmony or a Exara, or one of those, because of the environment. So I think it's each company and each institution needs to adapt according to the dynamics of its environment and what the requirements is, yet still try to comply with legislation and of course the statutory requirements that's governing us.
Thank you, Eric. Working with what you have in such a remote location is historically an issue, not with just your business, but with multiple businesses in the mining space. I acknowledge you, Tebogo. Thank you for joining us. If you can maybe just introduce yourself briefly for a few seconds, and then we'll continue with the questions.
Good day, everybody. Apologies for my lateness. Technology got the best of me. Quite cliche that today we are talking about digitalization and innovation and technology, and it ended up being a bit of a derailment for me. So I'm Tebogo, over 20 years experience in mining, multiple commodities, currently working, I refer to myself as a business transformation expert. So I've acknowledged and accepted the invite purely to be able to can share from my experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tebogo. And I want to lead on from Eric's answer. And maybe let's go to Sylvia. Sylvia, you've been with Harmony now since 2016. You are the global senior talent manager, right? What Eric was discussing is perhaps something you are facing, you are not facing, right? So, like Eric was saying, mines are often in remote areas, right? How are you attracting that talent? And what do you have to do to get somebody to join you in a remote location where to get a burger and chips that drive 220 kilometers? And also, what are some of the advantages of being in a remote location? Just give us your experiences around recruitment in mining so far.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kapil. I think it's a fact that your remote locations and not just the mining environment are not attracting a lot of people because there's limitations. Your work-life balance is always far from the city or your family. But what we would normally do and what we have done, we do have one mining in Mafikeng, which is in a very remote area, and over and above strategizing on retaining the candidates that we attract there, we also create some flexibility. I think it's often ideal that you create a flexibility. Places like that, you wouldn't want to really, box people into being there permanently. You may want to be creative and innovative and say, when you attract someone there and say, can you give me the two best years of your life? And after 2 years, we can start talking about something else. If you see that you are going to, you love the place, we can then extend. Because once you want to make it a permanent, you're going to forever have unwanted events, such as people are treating or people living without your plans. And what we also normally do is, with our graduate development programs, we target and earmark those places. We start building our own talent because we understand the context of the environment, and we know that it becomes very difficult to actually buy talent because we end up actually recycling the talent. People come and go. So with our building of talent, creating pipelines, we are surely but slowly managing the process.
Thank you so much. And leading on from that, let me go to Mohammed. Mohammed, you've been in this space now, you said, for 20 years. And just based on what Sylvia has said, you find people recycling and moving on and coming back and moving on and so forth. I mean, how do you retain somebody that lives 220 kilometers away from civilization?
Yeah, thanks, Kapil. And acknowledging both of the previous speakers, talent retention in the mining space is quite tricky. Especially in the critical production occupations. These guys they are firstly, a scarce skill. There is definitely a deficit in the market, with regard to these skills, which makes mobility even more possible because, they can typically walk into a job at most other mining companies, given their shortage of their skill. But yeah, in terms of remoteness, we are lucky in that we also have some international experience, given that we have an Impala Canada operation. It's also quite remote, around a 2.5-hour drive from a small town called Thunder Bay in Canada. So where we typically have different types of arrangements, which we haven't seen in South Africa, where they have a fly-in, fly-out arrangement, where people work 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off, allowing them an opportunity to spend time with the family. But what we've focused on a lot in recent times is upgrading the accommodation facilities in areas like that. Making them more accessible, providing them entertainment opportunities, but also putting a lot of focus on connectivity and allowing them the best internet connections that we could possibly consider, to enable them to link up with people outside of the mining area. So that's something that we focused on a lot. And other experiences we've had is looking at flexible work arrangements where possible. So one needs to understand mining is one of these industries where the work from home concept is not easily applied. It's almost impossible to apply, right? So whilst the entire world is moving in a different direction, miners are still expected to be at work on a daily basis, and leave their phones typically in their lockers and then proceed underground for between 8 to 10 hours a day and then resurface. So in that period, you don't get an opportunity like most are to go for a coffee or go for just quickly to run to the bank and so on. And that makes things difficult. So we've also toyed with the concept of a concierge desk at times, whereby these services are provided to mine employees who proceed underground. But it does also, introduce other dynamics which need to be managed from a trust perspective. So we've looked at innovative ways, remote work, flexible arrangements, travel arrangements, and then, upgrading the accommodation facilities, to make people as comfortable as possible, in these remote areas.
Thanks, Mohammed. It sounds like it's tough being an employee in the mining space, right? When you talk about it that way, spending time for 8 to 10 hours on the ground, no contact with the internet or your phone and so forth. So I'm going to go to Shlopsile and I'm going to ask you, now, COVID's changed a lot of our lives. Whilst we are working online, clearly you guys were not. When I say you guys, I'm talking about miners, right? How is this how has adopting digital helped you in the mining space, particularly in recruitment and retention?
So yeah, you are correct in saying that COVID kind of affected the industry differently. But in terms of, we have one digital mine, by the way, and the others are not so digital per se. But in terms of adopting technology, we are actually currently in the process of getting a system that we believe will enhance employee experience, because sometimes employee experience is what will make people feel like they can stay here, because if they go elsewhere, they are not going to get the same experience. And once we do have that system in place, obviously that would mean upskilling and reskilling, so that people are able to use that technology. We are benchmarking and getting to know what's out there, what's possible. But the big thing for us is enhancing employee experience, ensuring that even the technology that we bring in will make some of the work to be less laborious, and people can be more productive because they are a bit more engaged, without also then being mindful also not to turn people into machines, because we are human beings and job enrichment is a big factor. And if someone is just pressing a button and that's all they are doing, they will get bored. So it's important, in addition to enhancing the experience, to also ensure that there is enrichment. People are feeling like they are making a contribution to the organization.
Thank you, Shlosile. Gary, I'm going to go to you next. There's, we've got a business called Digital Regenesys. And as I mentioned to you earlier, it delivers in-demand trending qualifications, future fit qualifications like AI, data science and data. It's two different things, cybersecurity and so forth. And you seem to be touching on various parts of the industry and not one particular area. Can you perhaps share your experiences about the exposure of these technologies? And is it transforming mining? Is it making things better or worse? Is it going to make mining a more lucrative industry? Or is mining probably not going to be around the next 100 years?
Okay. Look, mining will always be around. The whole digital revolution is dependent on all the metals that mining mines. So irrespective of what the environmentalists say, we've obviously got to become environmentally sensitive, but mining will always be around. Couple of things, and I have the privilege of working globally and across industries. So the challenges we're facing in South Africa are exactly the same as what the mining houses in the rest of the world are dealing with, and in fact across industries. It's not just a mining challenge. The challenge is we've got limited skills, and if you're going to go and teach people digital skills, there are a whole bunch of other opportunities around Amazon, financial services, Apple. So we're competing against a limited resource pool. So HR needs to become far more strategic around how do we ensure we make mining sexy again. And it's almost to Eric's point as well. HR is it's not an administrative function to be recruiting people. We've got to be strategic. We've got to work out what it is that will attract people to mining, and what will keep them in mining. I think that's key. In preparation for this talk, I went into at the Summing into Mining Material. I know I'm not a spokesman for SRMM, so this is my personal opinions, but I can tell you what SRMM is doing. So there's a Young Professionals Council in the SRMM, which has a whole committee council, some really dynamic young professionals that have all got degrees, and they've looked at the industry's needs versus what we're producing as undergraduate qualifications, and there's a gap. There's a gap between what qualifications we're getting and readiness for work. So there's this big gap in the middle. I'm hoping that Regenesys can start trying to close that gap. And it's not just mining. Whether you're going to a greenfield digital mine, and I have worked on some of those, greenfields, fast-moving consumer goods, or you're going to a mine that's run on paper, the skills that are required are the same, and we don't have those skills, I'm afraid, our graduates. And then what happens is those people progress in their careers into leadership roles, and now you've got young graduates coming in, and without a leader who actually doesn't know what they don't know either around being able to guide those graduates, we are losing that leadership that's critical. So yeah.
Interesting. I'm gonna go to Bongo now, and Gary, we'll circle back to your points later on in the conversation. I want to talk about labor relations because that has been a hot topic, and it bubbles up every now and again. It becomes major in the mining space. Can you perhaps tell us about recent labor relations challenges and how you generally overcome them, and what strategies you deploy to handle labor relation challenges?
So I think everybody in mining front of mind when it comes to labor relation would have been productivity and productivity improvements that mining houses are seeking. At this juncture, most of the mining houses are going through a downturn in terms of higher operating costs. Everybody trying to move towards the lower cost curve of the trajectory. There's also a demand for higher productivity so that we are making call. But at the same time, labor is still calling for higher wages and wage increases. They are calling for performance incentives in terms of bonuses, but equally they are calling for better working conditions right across, whether it be in the form of incentives and perks, housing conditions, there's employee well-being, etc. Now, where the two are also finding themselves coming to head is on the whole digitalization and innovation. Because I think whilst mining houses are trying to digitalize, introducing complementary processes in bots, some robotics, wearables in terms of monitoring performance, productivity, and well-being of employees, you find that the two come to head in misalignment, because then labor representatives and employees who are represented by labor tend to assume that these things are out to monitor them and track them to the benefit of organizations, vis-a-vis seeing the benefit that in turn actually employees are getting out of introducing these complementary solutions from that perspective. So you find that stakeholder relationships, engagement gets strained. In turn, those may impact on employee morale and motivation and performance and productivity. Trust levels gets impacted. The culture within organization also gets impacted by some of those things. And and hence I think at this point we see a lot of organizational reviews currently on the go, with reductions anticipated in some of these instances. So I think we find that the role of labor themselves needs to be reimagined to a large degree, because the kind of constituencies that organized labor unions had been representing in the past has suddenly found a different face and requires a different lens in terms of how you are engaging with them. There's different generational mix now vis-a-vis what was there in the past. So you find that the relevance of organized labor unions and therefore relationships in terms of labor relations starts becoming completely different to what as HR people we had become accustomed to. So our own tactics in terms of how we are engaging with organized labor, how we manage employee relations, how we deal with labor relations, we are finding that it is requiring a transition from what it was to what we actually need to start positioning in the sense of the future of work on the mining sector. So I think there is quite a lot of changes and challenges that HR people are finding themselves to have to deal with from that perspective, whilst the legislation, the regulations has remained the same. If I dare not say stagnant, rather.
Okay, thanks for that, Popo. As a facilitator, I've done a few webinars in my time across different industries. I must say, I've never found such a high correlation with what each of the speakers have to say. Like everybody's conversations and answers are linked to the previous and linked to the next question that I have prepared. So thank you guys for being so awesome. My next question is around, let me paint a scenario. You've got a mine and you've got this, let's call it global corporate, and you've got a community in a remote area, and you've got cross-border talent that you need as well to support the community who will feed to your mine's labor. And then you've got automation of mines coming in, right? And this is a general question, by the way, so the first round of questions are over. How are you guys balancing all of that? Because there's quite a few things to balance. You must be thinking about automation of mines and the reduction of physical labor. You have to be thinking about that. Now, you've got that on one hand, you've got shortage of skills like you guys mentioned, specifically here in South Africa. You've got cross-border talent. You're also overseas, and you've got local communities that you want to try and upskill because this is an opportunity to mine some sort of precious metal there. How are you guys balancing this? And how should we do it, actually? I know it's a complicated question, but if you want, I can go. Yeah, please go ahead.
And the other speakers can. It's a broad topic, right? And I'm sure I'll start and make a few points, but some of the full speakers will definitely come in. I think people within the mining industry are pretty resourceful and can come up with solutions to problems. Very, very, very unique solutions to problems. So. In responding to your question, I think you need to view how we view mines in the communities is as an interconnected unit. So we've taken an approach whereby we're bringing in skills from the local communities. So we've introduced programs, and most mines have them. Cadet programs whereby youngsters who finish school are put through a training program for about 6 or 7 months, and then brought in through various into the organization. So that helps you from two angles. It helps with alleviation of poverty in the communities, and then it helps you also to have a ready supply of labor available to the mine. It helps with community relations. It helps with stability from a community perspective, because once these youngsters are, one of the biggest demands facing most of the mines is obviously employment. And once we started doing this, we saw a lot more stability coming in. It also helps you with retention in a way, Kapil, because these guys are from the local communities. Their homes are there, their legacies are there. They have intergenerational commitments to that area that they live in, so they're more likely to stay there. And we've seen through the various learnership and bursary programs that we have in-house, that some of these people over the past 10 to 15 years have now even progressed up to mine manager, general manager level, and that has been a great success. So that's the one element. The other element is really looking at community training programs, and then school-based programs whereby we've introduced the subject of coding, AI, and so on, and given people or youngsters, youth, the opportunities to look at beyond mining skills, especially in technology and other fields, from the host mining communities. So all of this is very interconnected, and most of our activities have been focused on local mining communities to improve the economic prosperity of areas around the mine, whereas previously, we focused on national levels. There is still a percentage of that, but a lot of our activities have now focused more on specific communities around the mines, and to uplift them and to uplift the communities and the educational levels around those areas. So that's one way of mitigating, some of the issues. But I'm sure some of the other speakers can weigh in as well.
Yeah, please go ahead, Sylvia.
I think you are often forced to think outside the box. I know the previous speakers spoke about how regulated we are. However, it is also important to think out of the box, because once you follow the regulation, you're not going to be inclusive enough. So what we've done at Harmony is we have built strong collaborations with our stakeholders, and starting with the union. And I think we have done well in that space, because recently we've signed a 5-year wage deal, which indicates that when we were on the 3-year deal, we were already thinking about the coming deal that we are going to seal, and we started engaging with our union, understanding what are their fears in terms of representing our employees and everything. And the same with having to, satisfy everybody, the community, the skill set that we need. We've then decided that we are going to be inclusive. We've done our studies to understand the population that we have. Mohammed has alluded, we've got those that we could obviously build through the graduation development program. And we've got a whole lot of communities that are not even interested in doing mining. And how do we then really also include them in the process? And then we started looking at other programs like Harmony. We do have a program that we started fully funding, and then later, because we were succeeding, we went to our CETA, and they've given us a lot of money, where we started building, your core mining skills underground, because we found ourselves often have to take time to hire an underground skilled person, and we started going to the community and understand the populations or the dynamics that we've done that. We are really not having short of our underground mining skills. And then we went back, we realized, okay, this specific population needed to have at least mathematics or at least grade 12, but we still have other population that do not have those. Then we start also thinking along the lines of doing portable skills for them, having our procurement assist them in opening up business after we've trained them. So you really need to have that mind of inclusivity, because otherwise you really get criticized. People will say, yeah, we understand you are doing well in the mining. You have a graduate program, you've got an internship program, but what about those people that couldn't finish school and etc.? They will still be at your gate and complaining and saying, we need to benefit. So it's more about thinking outside the box and making sure that you are inclusive enough, but that you will not do it on your desk. You will need to go on the ground and understand what is happening and have that collaboration, and so that you can make informed decision and keep sort of everybody happy. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. If I can ask a question, and maybe it's my simplistic understanding of your operations. I would think there are two types of staff in the mining space. Those who have to be in the mine and in the underground, and those who don't have to be there? What is the ratio of that?
Probably from a best practice strategic workforce planning, one desires to have a 80-20 ratio, 80 being your core of your business and 20% being more support and services function supporting the business. Now, I'm not sure, I'm going to try and anticipate where you are trying to go with your question as to whether the way that we have designed and planned mines in the past is still relevant in terms of the future of mining, and whether there's then opportunity to have some of these roles being remotable roles, and therefore enabling us to attract and retain maybe, some of this workforce that we are seeing as scarce skills and we are unable to can attract. So I think indeed that is the case. I mean, one always tries to maintain lower cost curve in terms of your operations, and therefore you want to retain your ratio between core and support to the absolute, minimum, close to the goal, so that you are investing your time and capacity more on your core that gives you productivity versus just support. But even in the case of support, you need to have the right type of support that is in place. And to your prior question that you had asked, I concur with what Mohammed and Sylvia both said, because sustainability and ESG is everybody's business. So as HR professionals in business, you can't just focus on the work of HR without having the context and the understanding of what are those things that you need to put in place to sustain the business into the future. So integration into other areas of work, so that your tactics, your tools, your approaches are enabling an overall agenda for the organization. So Sylvia spoke about, graduate development, portable skills, stimulating secondary economic activities in some of these communities and so on. It may be work that your social performance are working on, or your finance are working on, or strategy are working on. But it is so important and prudent that there's an integrated approach to work in a manner that you are not siloed, because whatever little investment that you're making, even if it's from a people agenda, that it is enabling the business strategy in the long run. And therefore, integration is key and fundamental to any work that HR is doing. Usually when you have a corporate plan or a business strategy, and then you have an HR plan or strategy, the two needs to feed into each other. It cannot be one standing alone separately from the other one, because it is so fundamental that there's full integration in terms of whatever you're doing in order to enable sustainable operation in the long run.
Thank you, Toboko, and you in a way have anticipated the direction of my question, but let me complete the direction. Now, I was in a conversation recently with some executives at a large synthetic fuels company, and their intention is to pivot into renewables completely. And as a result of that, you would have, let's call it, an inadequate, underskilled, obsolete workforce. And they had a very robust, interesting, and attractive plan to negate the effects of job losses. Am I correct in assuming that automation will progress in the mines, and it will become highly prevalent and a very core part of the mining space? And if that's going to happen, how do you plan to reduce the effects of job losses in this space? Eric, if you are talking, you are mute.
Okay, maybe Eric is trying to find his unmute button. So
Eric, we still can't hear you, but we'll give you a chance anyway. You sort yourself out and let's take Tobago in the meantime.
Sorry, I've
We'll
plugged
come
out the ear. I've plugged out the earphones. Can you hear me now?
Yes, you can.
All right. It seems like there's a little bit of a digital problem with my earphones. Yeah, I've been trying to chip in here and there after Mohammed and Sylvia and all of them. And I just want to concur with them. But, you know, you said that I'm an old school. And yeah, I'm old school. I mean, I started in the mining industry in 1988. So I'm pretty much old school, if you want to call it that way. And why I'm saying that is, and Tobago had a very absolute and accurate ratio analysis in terms of core business versus support skill. Now, we must look at the dynamics of our current mining industry. And we cannot divorce what we do and take it outside of the focus of legislation. And by legislation, I'm talking specifically around the Mining Health and Safety Act, which governs everything that we do. Gary will know from an engineer perspective that the Mining Health and Safety Act is a one tool that if you comply, it will keep an engineer out of jail. It will keep a mine manager out of jail. All right? Because if they don't comply with that, they are exposed. So what does the Mine Health and Safety Act say? And it says, particularly in Section 10 of the Mine Health and Safety Act, is that we are responsible to ensure that our people are aware of the hazards and risks associated with their job. That is the fundamental training that is required for all people, and particularly on our core levels. Now, where does digitization fit into this process? You know, I've now done a couple of discussions and the seminars that I've been guest speaker on, particularly the Africa Safety Seminar. And one of the things there was around digitization and simulation. Now, I've always asked people, and all of us sitting on this and our audience as well, how many of you ever climbed into an airplane and flew across the border, across the water to another country, and thought to yourself, but this person that is piloting this plane, that's flying this plane, did 90% of his training in a simulator. Yet I trust him to fly this plane. So my question then comes to the mind, why don't we want to trust our mining operators to be trained on simulators, which will then take them out of the dangerous situation and put them in an ideal, safe environment where they can exercise without danger to themselves, equipment, material, other people, and so forth, all different scenarios which might happen underground. You understand? And there's a drive currently of the mining industry towards that, but it's very, very slow. Now, if you talk digitization, it's easy to talk the digitization on a supportive function level. Because you're talking about your finances, your record keeping, your HR systems, your analytics, etc., etc. But the guy that's there underground, for one, doesn't have the necessary understanding and background, and most probably they can't even operate a computer. So what do you want to give him digital? But he can play a game on a cell phone. A 2-year-old can play a game and operate a cell phone better than I can ever do. Right? Because that's the way they grow up. So gamification, digitization in an operational space through simulation, I believe is a way forward in starting to, one, increase productivity. Secondly, reduce risk. Because that's the only thing that we in the mining industry drive towards safety. That's the first value of all the mining houses that's represented on this business, on this seminar. That's our first value, safety. Person going underground today must be able to go safely home to his family this afternoon. He, she, whatever the case might be. All right. And unfortunately, our environment, particularly South African mining environment, is very labor intensive still. They have not transitioned in the digital space. Yes, we're bringing remote machines, all right? So where they can operate the machine, they can still see the machine, they're still underground, they can observe the machine, but they don't have to climb onto the machine. They can operate it with a remote, standing away from the immediate danger. They are not totally out of danger, but we are already reducing some of the risks through digitization. And I think that's where we're going to. And I don't want to talk about all the enabling functions and the supportive function, because that is those kind of people, your white collar, your graduates, your managers. Those are not the people that on a daily basis are exposed in the mining industry to dangers. They are not. You know, CEOs, who pays your salary? Then, and I ask that to an operator, it says the company. Says, no, it's true. The company facilitates the transfer of the money into your bank account. But the guy who pays each and every salary in the mining industry, and I'm saying it myself, and Sylvia, Mohammed, all of you, Tubogo, the people that's paying our salaries are the people that's underground, that's boring and blasting every day in danger. They're the ones that generate the revenue. So we need to look at an environment and ways and means to make their environment safer. It's not always about progression in digitization and analytics and things like that. But how do we start protecting our people in the mining industry? And it's also one of the things that the unions are driving towards. So they are pro the digitization and the development of remote control mechanisms in the mining industry, as well as simulated environments. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to have a huge, not in a short term, we will not have a huge reduction in the mining industry, because we've been so long in that highly labor-intensive environment. And let's face it, South Africa is not on the same level as, for example, Canada or Australia in terms of digitization and machine development of what they are, and this legacy that exists. Our role is, as leaders and those going out of the industry, to go back and to say to the industry, how can we support you to develop it? All right, that mechanisms of remoteness, of simulation, of digitization on the lower levels, because it already exists on the rest of the levels in the mining industry. Just my 10 cents.
Thank you, Eric. Anybody else want to take a stab at that before I move to the next question? Yes, go ahead, Gary.
I want to just support exactly what Eric said, because there are a couple of strategic risks sitting and facing the mining industry. So one of them is there's a smaller and smaller pool of people with the right legislative tickets, because you can't mine unless you've got all the right government tickets. Okay. So what's happening is, at the moment, the industry is busy poaching from each other the whole time. And the pass rate on achieving the tickets has declined to like 10%. And that's due to maths and science literacy. So we're sitting with a strategic risk. Forget about digital. We don't have the right tickets to ensure safe mining. And I'm talking about survey, blasting, mine overseer certificates, all of that stuff. And you'll see all the mining companies are just poaching from each other on a smaller pool. That's the one comment I want to make. Second comment is, we do need to train people using simulation. I fully support what Eric's saying. There is another level that is, and this is a global problem as well, and you'll see if you're going to have a look at South America and even in Canada, you can drill better, you can load better, you can do LHD, load, deliver and haul, all better. But what we lack is systems thinking. And what I say about systems thinking, we're talking about not in the graduate level, but also in our management structure. How do you take a complex dynamic system and optimize it to ensure that that system delivers its maximum potential? And those skills don't exist in the industry. And interestingly, it's not a South African problem. And also what I've found, it's not just a mining issue. So we can drill better, but you will not see an additional ton coming out the mine, because we haven't understood the dynamics of a complex dynamic system. And those skills need to be also enhanced in the industry.
Thanks, Gary. Interesting enough, Regenesys as a system thinking short course. If you don't know what system thinking is about, and you want to learn the basic concepts or even advanced concepts, we have a course for that. I'm going to move on to my next question. And again, highly synergistic, very highly correlated conversation, and leading on from Eric. It's clear the direction you are going in terms of the resources and workforce that you need. What about you in the HR space? How are you going to have to adapt and change? How do you see your role changing? Or are you also perhaps going to become obsolete in your role of just hiring miners and executives, which is what and engineers? Because if that's changing, you also need to change.
Yeah. So Kapila, I'll give it a go first, and the rest of the colleagues can come in. So there's definitely a need for a shift in the way we approach our work, given the recent advances in technology and specifically in AI. If we look at the way we recruit, it's more of a digital online recruitment. The way you market your organization, out there to attract people, needs to be done in a different way. Using tools like LinkedIn and other e-learning platform, e-recruiting platforms, needs to come in. So there's a different recruitment methodology that one needs to apply. Once people enter the organization, the employee experience of the sign-on process, it needs to be is done differently and will be advancing. The way you exchange documentation, the way you verify documentation, all of that in terms of the sign-on process can be done remotely, can be done online, can be done in the most painless process. Once people are on, in terms of orientation and so on, we've introduced very online video-based systems, to orientate people as opposed to your classroom-based training. And then, in terms of the compliance training or legislatively required training that people need to do, moving towards a more machine-based training, virtual reality type-based training, similar to what Eric spoke about, becomes very important. The way, and during the life cycle of the employee, the way you collect information, the way you understand the employee experience by deploying various tools and so on. Social media becomes a primary methodology of communication with employees nowadays. We've introduced a beautiful online system. I think most companies use it. Called Wise Talk, whereby you're able to communicate via an app or via text service to employees. Obviously, it's customized and we've given it our flavor, within the organization. So these are the various different things that have already been changing and that will develop further. But additionally, even learning, the way people do learning is changing. There's some beautiful platforms that are available to employees in the learning space, whereby employees can track and monitor and undertake learning at their own pace, as opposed to being limited to a classroom with schedules and so on. So these are the various things that that need to be taken into consider. The one of my favorite topics is just around people and analytics, understanding behavior through data mining and so on. Safety is a big issue for mines, but once employees are there, looking at a couple of trends, sick leave records, disciplinary records, pulling in medical surveillance records, you can actually determine who are high risk employees, who are role-less employees, which are employees that are more likely to participate in dangerous safety behaviors and so on, and then manage them accordingly. So these are great opportunities that are coming our way, some of which we've implemented, some of which we are busy looking at. But I think there's the introduction of these technologies will change the face of how we manage and operate going into the near future.
Thank you, Mohammed. You can go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to latch on some of the things that Mohammed spoke about. I also believe that there's still a huge role that we as HR, if you want to call it that, can play. We are about the people, right? And from a perspective of, there's a speaker who spoke earlier about the business strategy. We make sure that we understand the business strategy, and we come up with a strategy that's talking to people and enabling the business to get that, and then use data insights to understand and map where are these people. I think it's Gary who spoke about some competition where we are just taking from each other. So having insights of who is our talent, where are they sitting, and how do we get them to stay. And once you've mapped your talent, then you are able to come up with sourcing strategies that will enable you to bring the right talent at the right time when you're needed, and also you help inform the branding strategy to make your mind the mind of choice where people want to come and work, so that even when they try to poach them, they will not go, because like I said, people are important. And then coming on to the skilling of people, making sure that as there is a transformation in terms of technology, because what we are seeing now is not going to be what we are seeing 5 years from now. We are playing a role in the transformation journey, ensuring that people are skilled at all times. There's forever upskilling that's happening to enable our people, but also the upskilling is talking to the experience. If you know something, you're comfortable, you're most likely to excel if you're comfortable in using that particular technology. And then also we help the business to retain the good talents by ensuring that there is a retention strategy of sorts that makes people want to say, not necessarily about money, not wanting to give them golden handcuffs, but understanding your talent. So for example, we have Gen Zs right now, and Gen Zs wanting to experience the world of work differently. They are not wanting to be tied down for a very long time. So how do you ensure that you bring some flexibility and they are not tied down, and they feel that they can come and they can go and they can do other things on the side as well. And then also just in terms of using processes like talent mobility, moving people around, these different ways of ensuring that your people continuously learn by also getting exposure. But also, I just want to say that it's very important to latch on to data analysis, because it will inform a lot of good decision making if you're understanding the environment, which is constantly changing. And as partners to the business, we can be informing and we can use that understanding of the data analysis to help the business make good decisions that will always ensure that they are striving at all times and they have the right talent for them.
Thank you, Shobhila. Anybody else want to take a stab at the question before I go in?
Yeah, I've raised my hand, Kapil. Sorry, you may not be seeing it there. What I wanted to say, colleagues, is that as HR professional, we often talk about the right things. But I think our ability and courage to be agile and to move forward to disrupt some of the old ways of work and things seems to be lagging instead of leading. And my observation is that often enough, I think from an HR professional level, we don't want to lead and influence and disrupt some of these things. And I think that's one skill and capability we need to start showing up more than what has happened in the past. I mean, being able to can use data and start equipping ourselves with data analytics skills, or using, the benefit of AI and virtual reality and so on, are all the things that are at our disposal. However, we don't seem to always be wanting to latch on and take on the courage to disrupt our organization and start introducing some of these things that had not been used in the past. So for me, I think as we reimagine the role of HR and also support businesses in this transition and transformation, change management becomes a very core skill. And it is a skill that often enough within businesses, whether it be HR or any other line, because it's not just a HR skill requirement. It's actually a skill for any leader to have. There is so much changes that are going on all at the same time in what we may even think is the now VUCA world of the future. And amongst many of these changes, we need to start supporting businesses in how they navigate through the changes, whether it be employees, whether it be leaders, and then whatever tools that we then use, i.e. your data analytics, etc., can then be complementary to actually helping people just to navigate through the change. So as HR professionals, I think we need to up our game in our ability to disrupt, but to also support through change and also build leadership change capability so that ultimately we are able to can support the business to navigate through the changes that are before us.
Thank you, Toboko. I'd like to go on to another question, but Eric seemed keen to continue on that point.
Yeah, thank you, Kapil. I just want to add on to what Toboko just said. One thing that I found in the HR space is that new type of HR fraternity which we have in the mining industry are pretty young and dynamic and digital savvy type. From how we have experienced it. One of the things, and I'm sure I think it was either Sylvia or Rosile that said this, HR needs to be a strategic driver of the business. It needs to be a pillar, one of the strategic pillars of the business, and not being just seen as enabler of the recruitment entity. All right. The problem that I've experienced that we've seen is that the youngsters coming in do not understand the mining industry. They're graduates, they've got diplomas, they've come in and they are recruiters. That's what they are. All right. And unless they start also understanding and probably get their hands dirty. So understanding, I've asked one of the youngsters the other day, do you know what a miner does? You do the advert and you interview for a miner, but do you know the environment in which this person operates? She said to me, no. She says, have you ever been underground? She said, no. She says, now how can you support a person if you do not understand where this person needs to be and what this person is going to do? So I think that's one of the things that we also need to look at is a holistic understanding of the business, both from a strategic level. I mean, the people sitting on this panel are strategic levels, all right? But those below us, do they understand the business? And do we support them to understand the business properly in order to support the business?
Thank you, Eric. I think it's a very interesting topic, and we can perhaps continue on that. But for the benefit of the audience, let's try and expand the insights we can give to them. I want to, again, like I said, high correlation, high synergies in all our conversations, and multiple, most of you have touched on this generations, the younger generation, right? And, if advanced material sciences, right, perhaps, and have already replaced some of the materials that are being mined, a lot of synthetic resources are being created, and I'm just fast forwarding to the future, right? The younger generation, the Gen Zs, are concerned with purpose and culture and values, and a lot more concerned with values, beliefs, and so forth, supporting environmentally friendly and sustainable organizations. And one can even say the mines are not sustainable. So the question is, how are you going to manage this challenge, which if you are not already facing, you will be facing perhaps in the next 10 to 20, 30 years?
So, Kapil, I mean, what you've painted there is already facing us. It's already a situation that faces us. The mining industry is not the first choice for any graduate in today's time. I'm told that in the early 80s, within the South African industry, mining was a very prestigious, occupation to go into, and many graduates with top marks, opted for that, and I think we've seen some of those great mining leaders lead and be captain of industries, in the past and in the current sphere. But that's changing. Also in the digital area, people are becoming more and more environmentally conscious, and mining is seen as counterproductive, to environmental stuff. Not knowing that a lot of the minerals we mine obviously help the environment at some point in time. So just confirming what you said, but I think from a South African perspective, where we could assist is that our country is still in this transition, and the fact that we offer bursaries, scholarships, and so on, is going to help us in the next 5 to 10 years, because companies can provide assistance, financial assistance to employees who want to, who are then able to study within mining. So in that way, by default, we would probably be able to capture a lot of good graduates that are coming through in the next few years. But as economic circumstances change, we will have to relook how we attract people to the mining industry. One of the speakers said it. We have to. I think it was Gary. We have to make mining sexy again, and do it in such a way that we can attract talent and retain talent within the industry. So, Kapil, that's just my thoughts on the matter.
Thanks, Mohammed. Yes, please go ahead, Shubsir.
Yes, I just want to add to the making of the mind space sexy. I think that if we understand who it is that we are trying to bring in, then we are able to target or curate in such a way that we are attractive to them, in terms of ensuring that we've got compelling content that speaks to them, and also be intentional about showing a life of in the mind, so that they can see themselves there and want to be there. Because it could be that the lack of interest or the declining interest is because they just don't understand what mining is all about. So if we have content that talks to the life in that particular space, and people can see themselves and be like, okay, it's not so bad, then there's a possibility of bringing an upsurge into the interest in the mining space. So this is not just about payments in terms of salaries and all of those things, because we know that right now there's a great resignation, and people were leaving jobs not just because of salaries, but having an understanding of what it is that will attract them, and curating our content in such a way that we are attractive to them. Sexy, what we think is sexy is probably not what is sexy until we've done some research and have an understanding of what do people want, the talent that we want, what will make them want to come to us.
If I look at the next topic, and we're talking about transformation and geopolitics, as you all know, the 29th of May will be a very fateful day for us all. And we could see some changes in our ruling government. How, and I can understand if you have reservations on your answers, but I myself have been doing some predictions on different coalitions, and I read up their policies or their manifestos on education as an example. And I read about a particular party who's quite radical, another party. In fact, two parties are almost a photocopy of each other. So the coalition in those two parties in education will see no impact for me and my industry. And then there's a few other parties, who might add a few issues. Have you guys done that analysis? Because the expected results is perhaps a very different set of results than we've expected in all of our by-elections. And how are you seeing it affect you or going to affect you? Nobody wants to answer. I can understand. It's a political question. But you don't have to mention any parties' names. It's not. It's fine. We can move on to the next set of questions. Let's talk sustainability.
I can share my experience. We, from time to time, invite the economists in our space, just to be ahead of everything. And what they have actually revealed to the company is possibility of coalition is unavoidable, and it often takes time for coalition to form and storm and norm. So although it might be a good thing, but it would obviously take us a long time to arrive where we want to arrive. I mean, we're talking about graduates, we're talking about unemployment. We've also invited an economist who said while we are grappling with unemployment, they looked into universities and saying out of 100 people that do register for their courses, only 10% or 20% get to complete their degrees, and yet we are here waiting for those graduates coming in. So their speculation was coalition. It's unavoidable. However, it's a good thing, but we might start a new journey that we need to normalize and stabilize many other things that are currently not into where we want it to be. Thanks.
Yeah, I think if there's a strong coalition, it'll be a lot of growing pains, but and thereafter you'll find a smoother ride, so to speak. Let's move on to sustainability, and again, I'm going to paint you a very colloquial picture, and I want you guys to comment. The mine comes into a remote area. There's a beautiful community nestled in the heart of nature, and you guys come in, you dig a hole in the ground, and you extract the resources, and 50, 60, 70 years later, you leave. And that community is perhaps not in a better condition than it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. This is a common mistaken belief, perhaps. Can you guys maybe expand on that and give us the reality of the situation when you exit a mine and the impact of the community?
All right, I will go first this time. It's okay.
Go ahead.
You've actually basically just painted the picture of Namakole. That environment used to be agricultural and a very, very successful agricultural environment. We in the area of Namakole, which is traditionally called Bushmanland. All right, it's Bushman land. So that's one of the things. Remember, again, from a legislative, I don't want to talk law, but from a legislative perspective, each and every mining house has got a rehabilitation fund that they need to comply with, money they have to put away to rehabilitate the environment back to basically the condition in which they found it. All right? But we're talking about the environment.
Eric, we seem to have lost you there. And I don't know if any one of the other speakers want to.
What our life of mine is.
Eric, just a second, Eric.
Can you hear me, Bill?
Yeah, you're breaking up. Maybe
you seem to be
try
frozen.
Maybe try switching your camera off and then attempt to speak, please. So let's maybe take another speaker in the meantime. Gary, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, this is such an important point, and there's some quite good work being done. In fact,
so Eric, let's just allow Gary to complete because we lost you there for a good few seconds, and we'll come back to you.
Apologies.
Yeah, so there's some interesting work being done. So as part of the SRM, we've got an ESG, they call it ESGS, an extra S and then for sustainability that is run by Dr. Michael Solomon and Dr. Gordon Smith. Gordon was the technical director for Anglo Platinum, and Michael Solomon is a professor at UCT. And the focus is beyond mining, because all these mines have massive amounts of land, and we've got to look at how do we make a sustainable agriculture and industry beyond mining. So there's quite a few interesting projects they're looking at. You know, if you look at just out on the West Rand alone, I mean, you are 80 kilometers from the biggest commercial hub in South Africa. You could be supplying agricultural products to all the major retailers. So there is a big drive to look at what happens after the mine shuts, and that has to start right now, and not only when the mine stops. And that's key. We've got to look at how the community, and if you think about it, if you create a whole downstream business on agriculture and supply of agricultural products into Johannesburg, then a whole bunch of other related industries start. Equipment supply, maintenance of equipment, farming skills development. I mean, so there is life after mining. So there's some good work being done, but it's pockets of excellence that have been looked at.
Thanks, Gary. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, sorry. My apologies for losing the network activity there. I was saying, you know, and Gary has touched exactly what I wanted to say. You know, one needs to understand what was there before the mine. All right, before you came in there, what made that environment tick? What made that environment alive and well at that point in time? What we found is a lot of times when you start the mining operations, the culture and the environment changes for the duration of the mine. But once the mine is finished, and save for the money that we put away for rehabilitation purposes and things like that, the ones that are normally the problematic area is the people of that same environment. And Gary has touched on it. So, you know, alternative industry is part and should be forming part of your sustainability program, your ESG program. To enable and to create the portable skills, create the alternative industry, do the upskilling of your communities in relation and in support and with your relevant stakeholders to ensure that by the time that you exit the environment, that there is an alternative to the mining industry available to the people. Or you need to say, I'm going to take you back to where you were before we got here. And 9 out of 10 times, it's so long ago that you will never get back to that point. And for progression's sake, and for the people, and of course now also your different generations that came through the development of the communities while the mine was in effect, would also have changed their mindset. So, you know, a needs analysis, understanding of your environment, understanding of your people, understanding of the communities in which you operate and where they want to go to, I think is essential as part of your ESG drives to make sure that you build a developmental framework around the community beyond mining.
Thanks, Eric. Initially when you guys were in the practice room, I said something to you and you guys laughed and said, no, we're not exploring that. Now, I can't help myself, but when doing some research, I found, and I'm just going to try and pull it up here while I'm speaking to you, there's something called the Outer Space Treaty, 1967, right? What are the mines? What is your moonshot? You know, as an example, education, the moonshot for us is eventually we'll be integrated into a human, because technology will be integrated into wearables and so forth, and smart glasses, and everything's going to be there. Education, perhaps in the next 100 years, is going to be free, right? I mean, people could have laughed at Elon Musk when he's trying to develop rocket ships that would return from space. And what is the moonshot for the mind? The 1967 treaty, Outer Space Treaty, says that anyone is able to exploit any outer space area for the use of mining, but does not hold exclusive rights to it. So, have you guys notified any thinking to that? And what is your thinking if you had to just think about it all of a sudden? Because there are companies overseas that are doing it.
I think it's not just something that is in the near term. I think for some organization in different proportions, it's something that's already here. And I suppose that's why the dialogue, even around ethics, is starting to find itself rearing its head in many of these things. I think from a health and safety, occupational health, as Eric has indicated, it's one of the front of mind consideration for any mining houses. So the development of technologies in terms of those wearables, monitoring employees when they are underground, their health, their fatigue management, but also using a lot of technologies in monitoring underground conditions or open pit conditions. You find that all of those technologies are already there, being utilized to a large degree. I think the one where we have moved from mechanized operations to digitalized operations, it's finding a far slower transition, and it is also one that is topical even amongst employers and organized labor, because it's a topic that is asking, what is the pace of reskilling, upskilling, so that as you introduce these bots and robotics, that you don't introduce them to the detriment of reduced jobs or high job losses that may be coming into the organization. But to the use of AI and digital technologies in monitoring even employee safety and health, it's something that has always been there. But then the question of ethics, which is a topical one, comes up, because you need to be able to can define how robots and technology is going to coexist with humans in some of those areas where you are deploying those technologies. And when you do give somebody a wearable and you start monitoring whether there's other ailments or other data points that you're picking up from that person, going around with that wearable, what are the right processes to start engaging with that employee, whilst considering things like copy and protection of information and not infringing on people's human rights and so on. So I think whilst we may be thinking of the moonshine, the phrase that you used around, to what extent and to what pace do we introduce these technologies to the benefit of organization? I think it needs to be carefully considered, but it's not something that is still coming. I think it's something that's already here. That's part of the discussion. And from an HR perspective, of course, because we are the people that protect people consideration, we need to look at the integrity and the ethics in how we use some of these things. It also then pushes us to even reconsider some of our own policies and processes that we introduce in the business.
Thank you, Tuogo. And perhaps we've reached the end. In conclusion, maybe a few comments from my side, and then I'll ask one of you guys to conclude, and then we'll end. I remember many years ago when I was studying, there was a case study we did on Apple, and they had a strat session in the 70s, late 70s, early 90s, and they asked, what is the future of work and communications? Because work is about communication. And after many days and many whiteboards and flip charts, they drew the phone, right? And a lot of people laughed. A lot of people in the room, Harlo Saji, laughed and said, that's not going to happen. And I just wanted to remind you of that. I want to remind you guys who are in the industry not to take anything so lightly. And there's possibilities everywhere. And I think with the younger generation and their mindsets, they think differently. And they want to support different types of thinkings. And they want to support businesses that are sustainable and wholesome and add value. Triple bottom line is becoming more prevalent now than ever before. The SDGs, if you're not aligned to that, then you don't know things of organization. But before I close up, maybe if you got one of you guys want to summarize and just give our viewers some advice on the next couple of years on mining in South Africa, particularly around retention and attraction strategies in HR.
Maybe I'll go first.
Let me go. I actually wanted to share a joke. I've attended the HR digital space workshop. It was a conference, and they spoke about how the role of HR is changing. I mean, we're no longer doing recruitment. We are not pushing papers. We are actually underground, or we are actually at the face. If somebody's leaving, we are to be blamed. And they said, if we are not inclusive, if we are not flexible, if we are not embracing, integrating digital tools into our space, we will not move from becoming human remains into becoming strategic business partners. So we're going to be obsolete if we still are stuck into the way we do things. They were talking a lot about the data that is going to heavily influence our recruitment decisions. We could do some predictive analysis and understand, and I know that we spoke about underground and making sure people are safe, introduction or integration of technology, but those initiatives or those decisions will be influenced by what we get on through data. We could influence heavily decision making, but more on data. And we would also, have more time to be strategic, because administration is a transaction. It takes a whole lot of your time, and that's why we are always, reactive. And they also spoke about, if you are going to think about digital tools with a financial head, then we are not going anywhere. You know how HR is treated. We are, Deboho said 20% HR, the cost must be little. So if you talk about a very beautiful tool that you want to introduce, they start, counting the cents and the rents, and they think you are bringing something that is going to be costly. But in the long run, I think we need to start owning our space, and it's also very difficult for HR, because our impact is more intangible. So it's very difficult to show people that this will work, because we are not talking about tonnages. If we're talking about people underground, when you introduce that machine, they want to know how much more money are we going to make. But in our space, how much behavior are you going to impact? What are you going to change? How would we know if people are working safely? And that's our challenge. But I think embracing everything that is within our space will actually set us for success. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. If you guys don't mind, I'd like to conclude now. Unless there's something burning you want to say to Bogo, I'm happy to take that before we close.
Yeah, look, I wanted to say, if we go into the past case studies of the likes of Kodak or post offices, etc., at some point they thought that they will never be obsolete. And forward looking, we know what has happened with any of those. So I think HR as a function also stands the same potential risk that we might think that we are so core in providing support because business revolves around people. But I think if we are not careful, I think the role will become obsolete unless we actually keep up with the changes that are happening. And change is coming through very, very fast. So if we continue to ruminate over things for too long before we actually deploy them, we will find that we will actually miss the boat and things would have moved on over time.
Yeah. I mean, even oil could be obsolete in the next 20 or 30 years, right? And to think that's what rules our current economic climate most of the time, it's quite a refreshing thought. So guys, I think today's webinar has provided us the deep insights into the future of HR, specifically in the mining space. You have so well articulated the challenges and opportunities presented by digital transformation. You guys have given us some very innovative strategies for talent acquisition and retention, their global impact and impact on economic changes, the importance of sustainable practices, which is central to your operations. I think the perspectives you have shared with us really seek to underscore the need for adaptive HR solutions, like you already alluded to, and a lot of technical considerations, technical advancement considerations. And as we move forward in the mining sector, I think we must continue to have an open mind, evolve, embrace new technologies, foster community engagement, and foster an inclusive approach. Now, when I speak about inclusive, I don't necessarily mean race, but I mean generations, because it seems like the younger generation is not as attracted to us as perhaps 20 or 30 years ago. But guys, as speakers, you've been excellent. Thank you for your insight, and I'm sure our viewers have thoroughly enjoyed your perspectives. All the best. Cheers.
Thank you.